Tucked away in the southwest corner of Florida is a town most people overlook, and yet it's ground zero for the worst housing market in America. I've made dozens of recent videos about the housing crash occurring in Florida, but this area right here is the epicenter of the new 2025 crash. Since August of 2022, the typical condo in this area has lost 19% of its value, and that line doesn't seem to be reversing anytime soon. It doesn't take a genius to look at this chart and determine the obvious. This isn't a coming crash or a warning, this is already happening. And what's starting here may just be the beginning. It could be spreading to the rest of the country. We're talking about price drops that rival those of Las Vegas and Phoenix in 2007. If history teaches us anything, what's happening here doesn't stay here. It almost always ripples out to the rest of the country. This is Punta Gorda, Florida, located on the southwest side of the Sunshine State. It's an area that blew up in the post-COVID world. The typical house here was valued at around $243,000 in 2017. Just 5 years later, in 2022, that same house that sold for $243,000 was selling for $468,000, an 87% increase in just 5 short years. While many claimed this was no bubble, it was obvious to most that this path was unsustainable, and following 2 hurricanes and 7% interest rates, the market here turned over, and what followed was a crash that may serve as the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the country. Prices turned over, and since that peak, a typical house has lost 13% of its value, with prices in just the last year falling over 10%. Those are numbers in line with the start of the 2008 crash, and here in Punta Gorda, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. Inventory, which is the real estate equivalent of a market's health, is essentially flashing red in a way that we haven't seen since the last big housing crash. Just so you understand the scale of how bad things are here, in 2022, there was about 530 active listings for the entire Punta Gorda area. Today, we have around 4,600, which represents a 760% increase, and that's over a period lasting about 3 years. The market has completely flipped upside down. Now you might be saying, well, those were the pandemic lows and it's sort of an unfair comparison. Well, even if you go back to 2016, a period that was considered balanced and normal, the inventory levels still don't make sense. Back then, the normal level would have been around 2,000 listings, and today, like I mentioned earlier, we have more than doubled that. This chart is proof that the market has dramatically changed, and nowhere is this more true than here in Southwest Florida. So what happened? Well, first off, Florida, along with the rest of the country, experienced a bubble. But here in this specific region, it was a super bubble. The post-COVID world brought a lot of people from the Northeast and Midwest who opened their chests and bought up all the inventory. Houses became extremely scarce, and along with that, interest rates were at all-time lows, the stock market was booming, the job market was booming, and there was a lot of speculation in the market. Homes became wealth-generating machines with people catching highs on leveraged equity. A house in Florida was a ticket to wealth, but as rates moved up, return to office became a trend and condo laws changed. This region in particular suffered the worst. Now, with all of that said, there was a final haymaker for this region in particular. It was Mother Nature that popped the bubble early here, with the Southwest region suffering 2 major hurricanes in 3 short years. Ian hit in 2022, a Category 4 that caused over $100 billion in damage, and Milton hit in 2024 with widespread wind damage and inland flooding. This kicked off this massive move down in prices and massive move up in inventory, and ultimately the situation on the ground doesn't seem to be improving after these storms. They sort of knocked over the house of cards. It's price cut after price cut as builders pull away and existing owners are forced to slash prices to compete with one another. Buyers are finally experiencing the first deals since the pre-COVID days, and as the market sways down, everybody is asking, is this the start of another 2008? For another opinion at this situation, let's take a listen to this quick clip by Michael Bordenero, a real estate YouTuber from Florida who makes tons of uploads talking about the situation on the ground there.
Because as this inventory continues to stack, more and more home sellers are slashing prices, and there's many areas across Florida right now that are already 10% cheaper than they were a couple of years ago. And I know 10% might not sound like a lot, But you have to understand, because prices went up so high, that a 10% reduction in price is equal to more like a 15 or 20% reduction in price if you would have had that same price reduction 5 years ago. But a lot of people have just kind of had it with the weather here in Florida, the hurricanes coming pretty much every season, the unpredictability with that, the problems with flooding, problems with homeowners insurance, and a lot of people are just cashing out now and taking their money off the table. A lot of them are making profits still, and they're moving to other states where it's a little bit more relaxed and it's a little bit less risky in terms of natural disasters. But the problem lies with home sellers, because home sellers are still in complete denial of where the market is here in Florida right now. And you can tell that just by the initial asking price that many of these listings come up at. And most of these homes, they sit on the market for 3, 6 months, sometimes a year or longer, because the price is so unrealistic in today's market. And I don't know if this is a problem that sellers are being stubborn and they just refuse to sell for less, or real estate agents are over-promising and under-delivering. I would imagine it is a combination of both. And the buyers that are out there are in no hurry to go out and pull a trigger, especially with the amount of choices that are available today. Buyers have more choices than they've had in 5 years and can afford to wait, and they can afford to put out many different lowball offers until somebody agrees to sell.
And that's the thing, existing homeowners have always had a hard time coming to terms with the changing environment. In Florida and many other markets, people would rather take their home off the market and wait for prices to hit what they deem to be the appropriate price, which is often the price of the home that's sold down the street. But the issue you're getting, especially down here in the South, is that new home sellers, which are often massive corporations, they are selling their homes for less than what these existing homeowners are selling for. In many situations in Southwest Florida, it is often a better deal to get a brand new house than it is to buy a property that is 40 years old. And this is why I always say that new home sellers really drive the market. It just takes some time for everything to fall into place. Even according to the National Association of Realtors, from a nationwide perspective, the median price of a new home is now actually lower than it is for an existing. So even outside of Florida, you're seeing this trend develop, with new builders sort of pushing the market down. What's happening in Punta Gorda may not just be a local issue. It could very well signal the early tremor of something much bigger. If history holds true, markets like this don't crash in isolation. Florida is the first domino, and the rest of the country may not be far behind. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a comment, especially if you're a buyer or seller in the Punta Gorda market today.